Welcome back guys to a new Cyberpunk video and to the absolute ultimate best Sandevistan build I have ever made. We will incorporate all the new latest and craziest tricks, including some new ones I have never really talked to you about before. This build is so strong that you will have up to 160% critical damage with literally infinite Sandevistan, and we will also add 70% additional melee damage. This is by far the strongest Sandevistan build, which will be of course at a 100% crit chance and totally melt every Maxtac and every enemy in the game, no matter which weapon you actually play with. Of course, instead of the additional melee damage, you could also go for additional headshot damage or stealth damage. That literally depends on the playstyle you prefer. But since melee is one of the strongest playstyles by far, and the game simply deals the absolute most damage with melee weapons, I decided to go for melee damage to give you the berserk damage permanently on top of your Sandevistan. If you imagine playing with Sandevistan but having the berserk damage applied all the time, that is exactly what it feels when you play this build. And with this combination, you will even have no problems to beat the shit out of Maxtac even on the highest difficulty, and this can solely be achieved by having literally infinite Sandevistan and a crazy amount of damage. Usually Sandevistan is a lot weaker because Berserk makes you invincible, but with this combination you don't need the invincibility at all. Of course, we will also use the new deep field damage trick, which gives you 1% additional critical damage for every point you put on cool. So instead of getting 25% critical damage from cool, with deep field you will get a total of 45% critical damage. And together with Sandevistan, this will be a permanent damage boost of 110% critical damage. But we can further increase our critical damage and even our crit chance if we combine the Militech Falcon Sandevistan together with the Edgerunners perk. That will give you up to 160% critical damage, and with the additional 30% crit chance you will also get from Edgerunners, you will get 100% crit chance with every weapon you use. These are the best Sandevistan stats I have ever achieved in this game. At least after patch 2.0. But how do we get 70% additional melee damage or headshot damage? Well, the answer is quite simple. We will also again use the Cyberware stats reroll. Simply buy some cheap Cyberware such as a subdermal armor, your eyewear, a reflex tuner or whatever. Because the two far right stats will change every time you upgrade this item, and these two stats can also be applied to any other Cyberware. So if you upgraded them and you get the stat you were looking for example melee damage or headshot damage, then you can go to another Cyberware, buy an expensive one such as heal on kill, and then apply these stats to heal on kill, because these stats will also be available for every other Cyberware. So you can get your desired stat like headshot damage or melee damage on every Cyberware you want. And this additional damage is actually a really big deal. Imagine your weapon DPS gets increased by 70% and then multiplied with another 160% from critical damage. This is like having 4 times the initial damage of your weapon. And you can of course also do the same with headshot damage or stealth damage. Something which came up this week is that Heat Shield also gives you a permanent 50% mitigation chance, because Heat Shield and Pyromania are constantly triggered by the electric explosions such as the Edgerunners perk, the Scalpel, or when you play with Shock and Awe. This will result in a permanent Maxtac of Pyromania, which gives you the Heat Shield bonus literally every time you play. Of course, we'll also use a Quantum Tuner hack so that we literally triple the time of any Sandevistan you may want to use. And when it comes down to which is the best Sandevistan, the Falcon Sandevistan with its 10 plus 2 seconds of initial duration will clearly give you the longest duration time with up to 41 seconds, and that doesn't even count the time you get from kills, which will easily give you up to 1 minute duration. The Poji Sandevistan is drained so quickly that it will never make up for this, even if it gives you a little more time per kill. But despite the insane amount of duration which you get from the Quantum Tuner, you should also try to household with your Sandevistan charge. Because with the Falcon Sandevistan and the Apogee Sandevistan, you can stop and start Sandevistan at any time you want. After you've finished killing a group of enemies, you should definitely stop your Sandevistan and wait for the next group to come by. That way you will always have enough Sandevistan left to kill an entire Maxtac group if they suddenly drop. This build really offers you almost every kind of playstyle you want in combination with the incredibly powerful Sandevistan. You can decide to go all in on melee damage, which is in my opinion by far one of the strongest playstyles and builds you can make, or you go all in on short range weapons such as a Cyberware, which will literally obliterate every enemy in the game as well, or you go for mid range where the Raiju is a really excellent weapon because it simply doesn't slow down when you use Sandevistan, or you go for sniper rifles where you can slow down your enemies every time before you shoot at them. The options you will have with this build are truly limitless, and you can of course modify this to fit your personal style. But now let's finally check out the build, guys. If you want me to create more of these crazy builds, then consider to become a Patreon or YouTube member, or check out our Discord server. The first weapon of choice, especially if you want to go for melee with this build, should be the Byakuo. The Byakuo is simply the fastest hitting blade in this game, and at max level, hitting fastest is what really matters. However, the scalpel is also still a really great alternative. The scalpel can help you to get 100% crit chance very easily and also reduce the Cyberware cost to do so. The additional shock chance of the scalpel will also help you to get up your heat shield mitigation to have a permanent max stack of 50% mitigation chance from heat shield and pyromania. But if you want to go for max damage, then there is no way around the Byakuo. For short range, I recommend you to get the Sovereign. The Sovereign has a unique ability that it will give you 100% crit chance at point blank shots at very close range. And since shotguns are some of the strongest weapon types, it is almost a no-brainer to use one of them, such as the Batsingshong, Deserter or Order if you prefer one of these. For mid-range and especially together with Sandevistan, I recommend you to get the Raiju. The Raiju is shooting so fast that it is still shooting fast enough even during Sandevistan, and it also comes with a 33% critical damage increase on itself. But you can of course also go for the Pride, which is the strongest pistol in the game, which gives you an additional 400% headshot damage on elite targets. And if you want to shoot from even longer ranges, then definitely pick up a sniper rifle. Again, the Sparky is a really great choice, especially since it also triggers heat shield. For the operating system, we will go for the Middletech Falcon Sandevistan, which simply has a much longer base duration with 10 seconds and an additional up to 2 seconds, which you can get from Reflex 20. And it also gives you 12% of your health back whenever you neutralize an enemy. In our hand slot, we will go for the Micro Generator because the Micro Generator gives you additional damage every time you reload a weapon. So if you have a weapon in your build such as a Sovereign that reloads after every shot, it will always get the additional damage from the Micro Generator. Our healing item will be a standard Maxtac, which will give us more initial health per charge. Since we get so much health from killing enemies anyway, we don't need Blood Pump at all. As long as you have Biomonitor in your build, all your healing items, including the standard ones, will be used automatically with no animation. An EMP grenade will fit the build best and will also guarantee you the highest possible damage, especially when you use them against robots if you even ever need them. For the Cyberware, we will be using the maximum legitimate limit, which is either 360 if you have 5 attributes over 9 or 356 if you have only 4 attributes over 9. This is of course without using the Chrome processor and with only collecting every possible shard once. If you don't have exactly the maximum amount of capacity, make sure that you at least equip all the mandatory items. You can leave out some of the other ones which are not encircled in yellow, but the yellow ones are needed to get the most out of your build. Especially the Quantum Tuner and the Axolotl, which will greatly help you to increase the duration of your Sandevistan. In the frontal cortex, I've also equipped the Mechatronic core to increase the damage against robots, since robots are often very hard targets if you don't have this perk. Then of course the Quantum Tuner and the Axolotl, as already mentioned, they are one of the most important items to actually increase the duration for your Sandevistan, or more precisely to give you another free charge. The operating system, of course, is the Falcon Sandevistan. It dramatically outperforms any other Sandevistan, including the Epoji, as already mentioned. For the eyewear, I recommend you to get the Kiroshi Cockatrice optics, which give you an additional 35% crit chance for every weapon you use. However, if you don't have enough crit chance, then it is also possible to just use a normal eyewear, save all this capacity, and use the scalpel as your melee weapon, which will still give you 100% crit chance during Sandevistan as long as you use this melee weapon. The arm slot is left empty because the Sandevistan items are so expensive that we cannot afford to fill every slot. However, if you can, then feel free to do so. For the skeleton slots, I picked the Epimorphic Skeleton, which greatly increases my health. Then I went for Bionic Joints and of course Dance Marrow. Of course, I re-rolled these stats to get melee damage on every possible item. If you want to make a headshot damage build, then try to get headshot damage on every possible item. In the nervous system, of course, we'll go for the stabber to increase our crit chance for all melee weapons, and then one of the most important items, the deep field visual interface. With this item, you will not only get 25% critical damage from cool, instead you will get 45% critical damage if you go for cool 20, which is a major game changer and greatly increases your damage with any weapon you play with. The fact that it also increases your crit chance for long-range weapons is rather secondary. We mainly use this for the crit damage. In the integumentary system, your first item of choice should always be Shock and Awe, because Shock and Awe is not only dealing 500 damage to all your surrounding targets, it also gives you stacks of Pyromaniac, which increases your mitigation chance from Heat Shield. Then, almost as usual, I go for Carapace, which greatly increases my armor effectiveness if I'm attacked from the side or from the rear. Definitely don't go for Chitin. Chitin is an absolute garbage item. The increased health regeneration basically does nothing. If you want to use something else than Carapace, then you should go for Proxy Shield. In our hand slot, I picked the Micro Generator, which increases the damage, especially when you use a shotgun such as a Sovereign. However, if you want to use smart weapons, definitely equip a Smart Link. In the circulatory system, I went for Heal on Kill to double the effect of the operating system, which also gives me an additional 12% health. So with Heal on Kill together, we will get almost 20% health back for every kill we make. Then the Biomonitor, of course, is absolutely mandatory to trigger our automatic healing. And in the last slot, I equipped the Micro Rotors. However, if you want to have even more survivability for this build, then you can swap out the Micro Rotors or Heal on Kill and replace them with Second Heart. Second Heart, however, will need way more capacity, so you have to remove something else. Possible removal candidates would be Mechatronic Core, Bionic Joints, or even the Epimorphic Skeleton. And in our leg slot, of course, we will use the Tendons for the double jump. Of course, you don't necessarily have to go for melee damage on every item. You could also go for headshot damage, stealth damage, or even quick hack damage if you make a Netrunner build. Regarding the skills, I went for a really small change to get the absolute maximum possible damage out of this build. So I went for a cool 20 to get the maximum amount of critical damage. However, if you have an existing build that has 20 reflex and 18 cool, you can of course also change reflex and cool and go for that, but then you will lose around 5% critical damage. In the body tree, we will go for all the standard stuff here at the bottom, especially Dorphead, which will give you 100% mitigation chance whenever you use a healing item. Then you go for Adrenaline and everything that improves your Adrenaline, and the finisher will give you an additional 20% health item recharge speed, which is always extremely good. If you want to play with the shotguns like Bat Sing Chong or the Sovereign, you should go for the shotgun tree with Die 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 and then the Spontaneous Obliteration. And also Close Quarters Carnage, which increases the chance of obliteration. All that is extremely helpful because whenever you obliterate an enemy with the Bloodlust perk, you will get an additional adrenaline boost. For a true David Martinez build, you can of course also improve your blunt weapons, but that was not the main focus for my build. The most important perks in the reflex tree are Flash and Thunderclap, which makes you leap forward to your enemy and perform an incredibly strong attack, and of course the blade finishers. So you go for Slippery, Dash, Lead and Steal and everything that leads to Flash and Thunderclap, then you go for all the finisher improvement and also Air Dash. Since I also love to use the Raiju in this build a lot, I also went for the SMG trees. So I went for Ready, Rested, Reloaded and everything that improves it, and especially the Sharpshooter perk, which also gives you additional crit chance and critical damage for every hit you make with your weapon. So you can easily get over 60% additional critical damage with the Raiju. In the tech tree, of course, we'll go for the middle branch with all things Cyber, License to Chrome and the Edge Runners perk, which will give us the additional elusive 50% critical damage. And the more you go into the red with your capacity, the more likely you are to trigger this effect and have this active in your combat every time. Then we go for Extended Warranty for the increased duration. This build doesn't use Chrome Constitution, however if you want to use it, then you have to add Subdermal Armor in your integumentary system in exchange for either Bionic Joints or the Mechatronic Core. Then we will go for the Renaissance Punk, which will give you +4 Cyberware capacity for every attribute that is over 9. And especially for the Cyberware stats reroll, it is really important that you get Driver Update and Shipware Connoisseur, because only with Shipware Connoisseur you are able to choose between 2 additional sets on the right side. To increase your survival abilities, you should absolutely go for the left tree, Glutton for War, Health Freak, Pyromania. And as I already mentioned throughout the video, Heat Shield is an incredible perk that gives you 50% mitigation from a max stack of Pyromania almost all the time you play. Also don't forget to go for Friendly Fire. And then the most important perk in the Andra tree is Borrowed Time. This is the secret God Mod perk that gives you a free health item charge whenever you make a kill at low health. This perk is an absolute lifesaver that will get you out of every tough situation, especially if you also have Reflex Tuner, which will slow down time whenever you are low health. Also don't forget to get the other perks to further improve your health items. In the cool tree, we actually don't really go for anything because all the points in cool are only used to get 45% additional critical damage. However, if you want to, you can get Feline Footwork, but this really only works when you are crouching. If you want to make a stealth build, you can go for Killer Instinct. And if you want to play with pistols or with sniper rifles, you can of course go for Focus and Deadeye. You can of course use the points which I spent on the SMG tree and just use it here on the cool tree. The relic tree is not really that important. The most relevant perks for this build are probably the vulnerabilities, and if you want to play with Mantis Blades, go for the Mantis Blade upgrade. I hope you really enjoyed this new build. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave me a like, and see you next time.